When fans saw Shedeur Sanders vanish from the Browns lineup with a suspicious injury report, social media lit up. It wasn't just concern, it was skepticism. Sanders had been a standout during camp, outshining veterans and building undeniable buzz. Then suddenly, without clear cause, he's benched. The reaction wasn't quiet. Journalists, insiders, and fans alike started connecting dots, and what emerged wasn't a health story. It was a cover-up. Many now believe the Browns didn't just sideline a promising player. They orchestrated his disappearance to protect an outdated internal hierarchy.
If you're into the real story and all the messy twists they don't show on highlight reels, go ahead and subscribe. And if you're sticking around to see how this Browns QB chaos plays out, you should definitely be subscribed.
This isn't about depth charts. It's about systemic manipulation dressed up as management. When a young quarterback like Sanders threatens to upend the established pecking order, he becomes a problem to be managed, not a talent to be celebrated. And when teams can spin fake narratives without consequence, it reveals something darker. A league that allows, even enables, its franchises to control the story rather than earn their results. The longer Sanders is kept off the field, the more transparent this strategy becomes, and the harder it is to defend. The Cleveland Browns are facing a storm, one they completely created themselves. And at the center of it all, a rookie quarterback named Shedeur Sanders, who went from training camp standout to mysterious benchwarmer in record time. What happened between those two extremes? That's the question fans, analysts, and insiders are all asking. Because according to growing whispers and a whole lot of angry tweets, the Browns didn't sideline Sanders for his health. They sidelined him for their protection. As in, they allegedly faked an injury to keep him off the field. Yes, a franchise actually faking an injury to bench a promising rookie. That's not just shocking. That's reputation altering. And judging by the outrage flooding social media, the fans are not buying the excuse. Because here's the thing. Shedeur Sanders wasn't just another rookie on the sidelines. He was performing. The early buzz from training camp was undeniable. Teammates reportedly respected his leadership. Analysts praised his command of the offense. The guy was making noise, the right kind of noise. And with a team that's been searching for stability at quarterback for years, this was supposed to be a breakthrough moment. Instead, the Browns went into damage control mode. And not because he flopped, not because he struggled to adapt, but because, according to mounting speculation, Sanders showed too much promise too fast. His rise created a problem for a franchise that clearly wasn't ready for a change in the script. So rather than adjust, they rewrote reality. The fake injury narrative is the Browns' way of slamming the brakes without admitting they're scared. Scared of competition. Scared of disruption. Scared that a rookie could walk in, outperform expectations, and completely shatter the power structure they've worked to maintain. That's not player development. That's performance art. And it's become a disturbing pattern, not just in Cleveland, but across the league. Promising talent gets shelved under suspicious circumstances. Fans are fed vague updates. And the NFL? It stays silent. This isn't an isolated misstep. It's a reflection of something much bigger, something broken. Because let's be honest, the NFL is supposed to be about competition. But that only works if competition is real, if talent actually rises based on merit, if teams are honest about how and why decisions are made. When you fabricate injuries to avoid internal conflict, you're not just lying to the public. You're sabotaging the integrity of the game. And that's exactly what this feels like, sabotage. The Browns didn't just pause Sanders' momentum. They completely derailed it. And they did it under the false pretense of concern, cloaked in silence, hoping nobody would ask too many questions. But now, the questions are flooding in. And the answers are nowhere to be found. Let's break it down. First, Sanders performs in training camp. He looks like a legitimate option. Maybe even a serious challenger to the current depth chart. That should be a good problem for a struggling franchise. But instead, the Browns treat it like a threat. And within weeks, suddenly there's an injury. No clear timeline. No detailed report. Just whispers and deflection. It's a kind of narrative manipulation that would feel right at home in scripted television. Only this isn't a series. This is someone's career. And it's being stalled deliberately. Why? Because Shedeur Sanders isn't just talented. He's magnetic. He draws attention. He brings energy. He threatens the status quo. And in a league where leadership often values control over progress, that's enough to make you dangerous. The Browns' decision to bench Sanders doesn't reflect caution. It reflects insecurity. Because let's not pretend this is a franchise riding high on quarterback success. They've struggled for years to find consistency under center. And the moment they stumble onto someone who looks like he might offer a spark, they shut it down. This isn't about Sanders being unready. It's about the franchise being unready for him. The fake injury isn't just a lie. It's a strategy. One designed to delay the inevitable, to protect egos, to maintain a fragile hierarchy that's already failed more times than fans can count. And, in doing so, they're not just hurting Sanders. They're hurting themselves. Because let's be real, this is the Cleveland Browns. A team that hasn't exactly earned the benefit of a doubt when it comes to quarterback management. If anything, they should be desperate to develop anyone with upside. But instead, they're clinging to a broken plan, choosing safety over spark, routine over risk. It's not just frustrating, it's offensive. And the NFL? Silent as usual. No investigation. No pressure. No call for clarity. Which tells you everything you need to know about how this league handles its rising stars. With silence. With suppression. With a preference for stability, even if it means burying potential. There's no clearer example of how the NFL allows teams to manipulate reality without accountability. And fans see it. They feel it. They know when something doesn't add up. And nothing about this story adds up. You don't fake an injury for a player who's not a threat. You don't need secrecy unless you're hiding something. And right now, the Browns are hiding Shedeur Sanders. They're hiding him from the field, from competition, from exposure. Because once he plays, and plays well, there's no going back. And maybe that's the part they fear the most. That his performance would make it impossible to justify benching him again. So instead of letting that moment arrive, they cancel it preemptively. This isn't cautious development. It's fear-based suppression. And it sends a clear message to every young player in the league. If you shine too bright, too fast, you might get shelved. That's not how talent is supposed to be treated. That's not how a professional sports league is supposed to function. But it's exactly what's happening here. And it needs to be called out. Because this isn't just about one player. It's about a broken system. A culture that punishes disruptors and rewards control. That embraces hype but fears authenticity. That says it wants stars, but only when it can manage them. Shedeur Sanders doesn't fit into a manageable box. He's not quiet. He's not passive. He plays with confidence. He acts like he belongs. And that's what scares the Browns. That's what scares a league that prefers its rookies humble and quiet until they're told otherwise. But Sanders didn't wait for permission. He showed up ready. And instead of rewarding that, they benched him. Under false pretenses. With a fabricated injury that no one can confirm and no one wants to explain. It's not just shady. It's shameful. And while the Browns scramble to control the story, they've already lost the narrative. Because people are talking. People are watching. And people want answers. The NFL can try to ignore it. The Browns can try to spin it. But you can't fake your way through fan outrage. Not when the receipts are this public. Not when the manipulation is this obvious. Shedeur Sanders is a threat, not because he's reckless, but because he's ready. Because he represents a shift in energy that teams like the Browns just aren't built to handle. And instead of adapting, they're suppressing. They're choosing silence over transparency, control over competition, narratives over truth. But that won't last forever. Because eventually, Sanders is going to play. Whether in Cleveland or somewhere else, that debut is coming. And when it does, it's going to expose everything this franchise tried so hard to hide. Until then, the outrage will only grow. If you're tired of seeing promising talent buried under politics, speak up. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Do you think the Browns faked the injury? What do you think they're so afraid of? Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss what happens next, because this story is far from over. And when the truth comes out, it's going to hit a lot harder than any injury ever could. The Browns didn't just bench a quarterback, they benched the moment. They benched momentum. They benched excitement. They benched possibility. Shedeur Sanders wasn't just running reps at training camp. He was building a following. That's what happens when you show flashes of leadership, command the offense, and bring energy into a locker room starving for direction. That's what happens when fans see something different, something electric, and start to believe, maybe this is the guy. And then nothing. The storyline grinds to a halt. The narrative shifts. The headlines go quiet. And we're left with a kind of vague, he's dealing with something, nonsense that sets off alarms for anyone who's been paying attention to how franchises manipulate perception. Because let's not kid ourselves. If Sanders had been underperforming or genuinely hurt, the Browns would have said so. They would have trotted out a medical update, maybe even a doctor's comment, or, at the very least, a timeline for return. But they didn't. They left it open-ended, deliberately. They left just enough ambiguity to keep control of the story, without offering any real accountability. And in doing so, they confirmed exactly what fans feared. This wasn't about protecting Sanders. It was about protecting themselves. Because that's what this is all about, control. The Browns don't want a quarterback who brings the spotlight before they're ready. They want someone they can manage. Someone who fits the system. Someone who plays by the rules, even when those rules are rigged. And Sanders? He's not that guy. He has a following. He has swagger. He carries himself like someone who knows his worth. And the moment he stepped into that facility, he wasn't just a prospect. He was a presence. One that disrupted the fragile ecosystem Cleveland's front office built to justify years of safe, unremarkable decision-making. You don't fake an injury to sideline someone unless you're afraid of what they might prove. Because if Shedeur Sanders had played, if he had taken real reps in preseason or even pushed the starters in drills, it would have forced a conversation the Browns didn't want to have. A conversation about who really gives the team the best chance to win. A conversation about whether this rookie is already outpacing the veterans the team has invested in. And that conversation? It's political dynamite. It puts pressure on coaches. It embarrasses executives. It exposes how much money and time have been wasted on quarterbacks who aren't creating the buzz Sanders has already generated. And he hasn't even played a snap. That's why this whole injury narrative is so insulting. Not just to Sanders, but to everyone who watches this league and believes it's supposed to be a meritocracy. A place where the best players rise. Where competition is fair. Where talent gets a chance. Because what we're seeing now isn't just bad decision-making. It's a symptom of a system that prefers predictability over greatness. And the Browns aren't alone. The NFL as a whole has shown a pattern of suppressing rising stars when their success threatens the existing order. It's not a conspiracy, it's a business strategy. Protect the investments. Maintain the image. Keep the power where it's always been. That's why the league hasn't stepped in. That's why there's been no probe, no statement, no pressure on the Browns to clarify what's happening with Sanders. Because deep down, the NFL doesn't mind when franchises bend the truth, as long as it keeps things stable. But this time, they picked the wrong guy to suppress. Because Shedeur Sanders isn't some anonymous rookie. He's visible. He's vocal. He has an audience that stretches far beyond the facility walls. And when fans saw him show promise, then disappear without a credible explanation, they didn't move on. They demanded answers. And they're still waiting. What the Browns don't realize is that by trying to sideline Sanders quietly, they made him louder. They turned this into a story bigger than football. A story about power, politics, and fear of change. Because that's what this really boils down to, fear. Not fear of injury. Not fear of failure. But fear of transformation. The NFL talks a big game about embracing the next generation of talent. But the truth? The league and many of its franchises are terrified of what happens when that talent doesn't wait its turn. When a rookie walks in and starts outshining the system before they're given permission. And make no mistake, Sanders was outshining it. His training camp wasn't just impressive, it was disruptive. He made people look. He made people ask questions. And in a league that thrives on maintaining order, that's dangerous. So they pulled the oldest trick in the book. Invent a reason to pause the momentum. Toss out a shadowy injury. Blur the timeline. Limit access. Hope the hype dies down before the questions get too loud. It's cynical. It's cowardly. And it's not going unnoticed. Fans are more informed than ever. They know when something stinks. And this reeks of damage control. The worst part? This doesn't just hurt Sanders' development, it erodes trust. Trust between the team and the fan base. Trust between the league and its audience. Because how can anyone believe in the process when a rookie can be this good, this promising, and still get shelved under a transparent excuse? It sends the exact wrong message. It says, don't be too ready. Don't shine too soon. Don't challenge the plan. But Shedeur Sanders did all of that. And that's exactly why he's not playing. The Browns had a shot here. A real shot to embrace a different future. To let the fans rally behind someone who actually excited them. But instead of courage, they chose containment. And the league let them. Which tells you everything you need to know about the real priorities at play. Because if talent were really king in the NFL, Sanders would be getting reps, not rumors. And if transparency mattered, the Browns would have been honest from the start. But instead, we're here, watching a promising quarterback become the latest victim of a franchise more interested in preserving power than pursuing progress. It's not just sad, it's infuriating. And it should be a wake-up call for every fan who's tired of the same tired decisions keeping their teams in the mud. Because this isn't about bad luck. This is about bad leadership. Shedeur Sanders should be playing. He should be developing. He should be gaining momentum, not fighting to exist inside a machine designed to mute players like him. But if there's one thing this whole mess has made clear, it's that Sanders won't stay muted for long. You can delay his debut. You can fake an injury report. You can bury him in vague statements and PR strategy. But talent like this? It doesn't stay buried. Eventually, someone's going to give him a real shot. And when that happens, when the Browns no longer have the power to hide him, it's going to be very, very obvious who made the wrong call. Until then, keep the pressure on. The moment Shedeur Sanders finally walks onto an NFL field under the lights, not in a scripted, choreographed PR stunt, but in a real game where the stakes matter, it's going to feel like vindication. Not just for him, but for everyone who watched this whole disaster unfold and said, this isn't right. Because it isn't right. No rookie should have to overcome not just the challenge of professional football, but a franchise that actively works against their own potential. That's not development. That's damage. And here's what makes it even worse. This kind of manipulation works until it doesn't. It works when people don't pay attention. When the media doesn't dig deeper. When fans give up and move on. But in this case, they didn't. Fans stuck around. The questions kept coming. The frustration only got louder. Because what the Browns did or didn't do with Shedeur Sanders became symbolic of something much bigger. It exposed how deep the cracks go. How easily teams will sacrifice a rising star if it means preserving the illusion of a plan. How quickly franchises will bury momentum to protect decisions they already regret. And how comfortable the NFL is sitting on its hands while this kind of power play unfolds. The league could have said something, asked for clarification, pushed the Browns to be honest about Sanders' status. But instead, it fell into the same pattern it always does when faced with internal drama, denial and silence. It's a calculated move, because if they acknowledge this, they'd have to start acknowledging everything. The lack of transparency, the manipulation of player narratives, the control that franchises exert over every detail, right down to who's allowed to be seen as the future. And that's the part that really hits home, because Shedeur Sanders is the future. Maybe not just of the Browns, maybe not even just of the NFL, but of a new kind of player. One that's not just athletic and coachable, but media literate, culturally relevant, and unafraid of the spotlight. One that doesn't wait to be told it's his time. He shows up like it already is. That kind of energy is threatening to franchises that are used to operating like closed-door country clubs. And Cleveland, of all franchises, has a long track record of pushing back against anything that doesn't fit their rigid mold of how it's supposed to go. But let's be real. How it's supposed to go hasn't worked for them in decades. So when someone like Sanders walks in and flips the energy, they should be leaning in. Instead, they build a wall, called it an injury, then crossed their fingers that fans wouldn't dig deeper. But the truth always leaks. And in this case, it's pouring out. The injury isn't real. The silence isn't sustainable. And the consequences? They're piling up. Because when you suppress someone like Sanders, it doesn't just kill trust inside the locker room. It sends shockwaves outside of it. It tells agents, rookies, and even veterans, this is not a place where performance equals opportunity. This is a place where politics still win. And that's a disaster for team culture. You can't sell the idea of a team-first mentality when players know that talent doesn't actually matter. You can't expect trust when the most impressive rookie in camp is disappeared behind vague excuses and hush-hush whispers. And you definitely can't expect fans to stay loyal when they see you burying someone who could finally give them hope. Shedeur Sanders isn't just another name on a depth chart. He's a spark, a story, a shot at something new. And if Cleveland can't see that, or worse, if they do see it and are still actively choosing to shut it down, they deserve every bit of the backlash they're getting. Because what they did wasn't just wrong, it was predictable. The Browns have been playing scared for years. Scared to take real risks. Scared to admit their systems don't work. Scared to let go of the past. And now, that fear cost them trust. It cost them credibility. And, depending on how this story plays out, it might just cost them Shedeur Sanders altogether. Because if he gets the opportunity somewhere else, somewhere that actually values what he brings, there's no putting the lid back on that bottle. He's going to shine. And when he does all of this, the fake injury, the manipulation, the control tactics, is going to look even more pathetic in hindsight. Fans won't forget, and neither will he. So to the Browns and to the league standing behind them, you may have delayed the moment, but you didn't stop it. Because talent like this doesn't disappear. It waits. It works. It remembers. And when it comes back, it reminds everyone exactly what they tried to suppress. If you're still watching, drop your thoughts below. Do you think Shedeur Sanders will eventually break through? Was this all about fear of competition? And what does it say about a league that keeps letting this happen? Hit that like button if you're over watching franchises ruin their own future to protect their past. And make sure you subscribe, because when Sanders finally gets that shot, you're going to want to be here for the fallout.